Hi everyone. I hope I'm audible and visible. So good evening. I am Anish, a fourth year law student at the National Law School of India University, Bangalore. I'm also the one who started this initiative called the National Law Training Institute. So today we have a very special guest amongst us. We have Sanya Sethi, who got a very impressive All India rank of 4 in NLSAT 2024. She was also an NLTI student and did a major part of her preparation from our module. So Sanya, over to you. Could you please introduce yourself? Tell us where you did your graduation from, where you belong, and how's your experience in NLS been so far?
Thank you for the introduction, Anish. Hi, everybody. I'm Sanya. I have given this exam twice, actually. I got in last year and I got an All India rank 4. With that, I had done my graduation previously in from Hindu College in philosophy at Delhi University. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here and answer questions, whatever you might have.
Right. So Sanya, the let's follow this schedule. You can first present your slides, share your thoughts on how to prepare for NLSAT in the next 6 months. There must be a lot of students who are just starting out their preparation, and there are some students who are doing it for 5 6 months already. So try to cater to everyone's interests. And in the end of the session, I think you can open up the floor to every student who might have any question. You can also keep a regular check on the chat option. If someone has any doubt, they can put their question in the chat option also. So
Hmm.
with this, you can share your screen and take over the session. Over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm just going to
Yeah.
share my screen if anybody can confirm that they can see it. Uh, Hi, is this? Can you
Yep.
see?
It's visible. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm just going to start with the fact that this exam will obviously, I understand that all of you might be very overwhelmed with the way this exam is and the narratives that surround this exam. But honestly speaking, it's not that tough and it's absolutely viable to clear it in six months. Honestly, a lot of people have cleared it in time that is lesser than this. So I don't think that you might, you don't have anything to worry about, like personally. In terms of this, I'll tell you how I'm going to structure this today, like the entire discussion. I'm going to basically revolve this around two parts. We'll discuss part A and then we'll discuss part B. But before I go into it, just general information about the exam that you all might or might not know, because as Anish already stated, I think some of you might be starting preparation right now. So we'll just go and have like a quick recap in terms of all that it is that this exam entails, and then we can go ahead and then ask specific doubts. If you like, you can put your questions in the chat box, and if they are urgent or pertinent to that particular slide, I'll take them. Otherwise, what I'll do is I have designed it in such a way that it is beginner friendly, so by the end of it, I hope that it answers all of your questions. But even if that's not the case, we'll take it up separately either way. Just some general information. The paper division is a 75 and a 75, but this is just pertaining to Part A. So within Part A basically talks about like three main topics, that is general knowledge, English, and critical thinking. And the division roughly for the past 3 years has been a 25, 25, and a 25. Obviously, with like particulars such as sometimes they ask more English, more critical thinking than GK, and vice versa. But all sections are extremely important in order to go ahead and then clear this exam. And I understand that the GK for this paper, if most of you have looked at the paper from past year, isn't really the most specific, because they ask a lot of things, and some of those things aren't really as as cliched as like what UPSC for instance asks you. And I understand that it might be something that's very niche that you might not be the answer to, um, which is why I think it's important to focus on all other sections equally, so that you don't go ahead and then lag behind because of a certain question in critical thinking, critical reasoning, or even English that might throw you off. So with that, I think a good thing about this exam that is that it doesn't really require a lot of rote learning. I just think it requires a lot of practice and just going back and in revisiting the information that you've already consumed. I understand that some of you have been doing this for some time and some of you are just starting. And a good thing about the exam is that it doesn't really ask you like things from like a lot of years before. So I think you have enough and sufficient time to cover all of those things, and you don't need to rote learn a lot of things exactly. And at that point, just revisiting and making personalized notes according to what you think your particular areas are is one thing that I would recommend. But also sources. I think this is something that was personal to my strategy. You can obviously tweak it according to what you think is right. But sources for me, general knowledge was GK compendiums and daily newspaper editorials. For general knowledge, the GK compendiums that NLTI provides, or any other GK compendium that you might see online. For instance, like sometimes people are more used to the like following up compendiums that are daily. Some of them are monthly. For daily compendiums, I think that you have a lot of UPSC sites doing that, although they are very detailed, so you can pick and choose accordingly. And a lot of monthly compendiums otherwise that you also might get, like NLTI also provides them, but I think there are also like a lot of free resources that you might get, such as the UPSC websites I'm mentioning about. I think you can take care of your GK portion by looking at news every day, because I think that doesn't leave a lot for you to do in the end. And daily newspaper editorials, I think this is one source that you can use in ways more than one, because with newspapers, I think it works as a very good resource, not only for doing GK, but also for doing other portions of the paper, such as part B, such as going ahead and practicing critical thinking and reasoning. And we'll get into how we can do that and maximize the newspaper to the most. Also, when I'm referring to the newspaper, personally, I think a lot of people go through the entire newspaper, but I don't think that's something that I did, and I did not do that throughout the 2 years of me prepping. So I also would say that you don't need to do that, because I think it worked out fine for me. But obviously, if you can, that's great. But the part that you need to focus on is mainly editorials, because here they talk about, let's say, opinions, something that is going on currently in the country, what different people from different strands think about it, politically, socially, culturally, and then you can get your information from here and update it in your current affairs document, or like your notebook, whatever it is that you're making, so that you don't get puzzled when you're revising for the exam. For English.
Hi guys, really sorry. I think there was a glitch. I'm asking Sanya to join back again. Stay online for a couple of minutes.
Hi, I think there was a glitch.
Hi Sanya, I'm really sorry. I think some of the people dropped out like collectively. I'm making you the moderator again. You can start sharing your screen. Sanya, one more thing. I think there's another glitch here that after you share your screen, your video gets turned off automatically. So after you start your screen sharing, just come back to this site and maybe start your video again, so it will work.
Oh, I think I tried to do that, but I think the video or the screen sharing works. I'm not very sure, but I'll try to do that again. Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, there's a comment that I wasn't audible. Just to check, am I audible for everybody? Could like a few
Yeah,
people.
you're audible. I think when you dropped off, the comment is of that time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense, makes sense. Thank you. All right. Should I try to share my screen?
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll also try to put on my camera this time again. Right. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, your screen is visible. And
Oh,
you are also visible now. Perfect.
okay. All right. So I think I was talking about English. Like I said, they usually use a lot of excerpts that they pick up exactly from newspapers, and which most of them are from editorials. The newspapers that I personally used were Indian Express and Hindu both, and I did them daily. Which is not to say that you can obviously use different resources or different newspapers that you are more friendly with. But yeah, these are the newspapers that people usually use. At that point, it helps you with your vocabulary also, because I think NLS also asks sometimes, what does this particular phrase mean, what does this word mean in this particular context. So reading newspapers, number one, gives you an idea about what it is that is there, which is going to be asked in your exam. But also, secondly, what it does is also give you like reading speed and comprehension speed in a limited time. So when you start reading the newspapers, sometimes it's going to be the case that when you're reading the newspaper, it's going to probably take you an hour or more than an hour. Personally, it took me like 2 hours to cover both of the newspapers. But with time, you're going to get faster with comprehension, you're going to get faster with interpretation, you're going to get faster with like decoding stuff that is written in between lines. And that is something that will help you, especially when you're attempting part A. We'll come to part A, time strategy, etc., once we reach that stage. But this is on English and also critical thinking. I think this is also connected to understanding the passage really well, because they also always ask you things like, what does the author mean, what is the tone of this particular author, not directly so, but talking about things like, what does this author mean, what is the main point of this passage. If one of the statements is true, then what is necessarily going to be true in order for this X statement or Y statement from the passage to be true. For that, you don't only need to know the facts or like the crux of what the passage is talking about essentially, but also like look at what the author is trying to basically say, what is something that the author might support if a statement is supposed to come up, for instance, and then look at this in that particular context. So it's important to read the piece as a whole instead of like just grasping factual knowledge from it, something that you can also practice with newspaper reading. With that, is there any question right now regarding this, or can I move? Yeah, I use compendium and newspapers both. I just saw the chat. All right. Seeing none, we'll just start with part A. So for part A, I think there are a lot of challenges that come with part A, which is specifically one of them being that you need to clear this part in order for your part B to be checked. Uh, since most of the people, I think, are so focused on doing part B also and thinking about oh, part B bhi khatam karna hai, and there is a lot that you have to do. I think they forget to focus on passages by the time that they come to the end of part A, and then they're in such a rush that they're unable to read and getting questions wrong. I think one thing that I found personally, which was very helpful, is that that you can like do this with practicing mocks, but also when you're writing the paper, it's important to note that you need to like stick to a particular time. You can't let part A go on and on. And sometimes it might also be the case that might have set like 60 minutes in your head as like the time, but it might go to 70. So just make sure that you don't like panic, because part B, I think, is something that can be done. And also understand that you can maximize your score in part A a lot more than part B. Basically because you need to, which is not to say, I'm not saying that part B is not important. I just think that part B has more lengthy questions and it asks a lot of you. And you can just, for example, I've heard a lot of people who miss on their essays and they just write down points, etc. Obviously, that doesn't give you the best score, but it still gives you a score. With part A, if you leave out complete passages, there's a chance that your part B might not get checked because you don't reach that particular percentile that's required. But also B, it will affect your score. And in part A, one good thing is that if one of your questions is right, there is nothing that anybody can take away from you, because you'll get that whole 1 mark, right? So try to focus on part A and try to strategize part A in terms of time challenging. I think a good reference for keeping part A as like part to finish part A in a particular deadline could be, I think, 65 minutes. I don't think you should spend anything more than 70 minutes on part A, even when you're trying to mock. I think one good strategy that works out with practicing part A is mocking, because it gives you a simulation of what the paper is going to look like, and how long it is taking you to understand passages and deal with different kinds of passages. Obviously, not all passages can be about things that you might be friendly with. I remember there was one passage when I was reading NLS for the first time, which talked about, I think, science, and it was talking about like some particular genetic invention or some discovery, I don't know. And it was so mind boggling that I couldn't really understand it, and it just took me so much time. But the thing with mocking is that you get better with understanding different sorts of passages at a point in time wherein you're practicing these passages, which is why I think this exam is a lot about practicing rather than only information consumption. So try to deal with time, time management that way, and it requires again a reading habit which you can address through what I talked about in terms of like looking at newspapers, etc. um, oh wait, there's a question: from where can we get mocks? I think there are a lot of sources, but also NLTI does good mocks. I also personally use them, so I think you can use that. How long should we give to part A? Can you repeat? I think part A, a good time would be 65 minutes. Try to target that. But 70 minutes is the most I think you should do, because you have a lot in like that you have ahead of you. You have an essay, you have 6 questions to write. Try to limit to 65 to 70 minutes. If you're just starting right now, it might take like 75 minutes. But try to practice a lot with mocks. You can check them out also, I feel. Once you get into like the practice, you will get better at time management, and you will get better at answering certain questions. You will get better at getting some questions right when you read them, and you'll get in a like in a habit of interpreting the passage in a certain way. So I believe that this is more of a practice exam that way, and that's how you can deal with it. But also yeah, so I think challenges with part A is covered. Number one, I think go through all NSAT papers and try to establish a pattern for yourself in order to understand the paper better for yourself and strategize better. I think this is the first thing that I did when I was giving my exam. What I did was, I think that was the time where in they had 2 papers already out. Now there are 3. You can go and access these papers. It's only part A. You can go back. You can. So what I did was I opened up a Google Doc and I looked at every question that they asked. I analyzed that question in terms of like what is it that they're asking in every question. What are they targeting? What are the current affairs that they're asking? What is it that they're trying to check here? I made myself a list and I tried to prep along those lines. I tried to analyze the paper in a way that helped me personally, and that strategy is going to be different for everybody. But one thing that I would recommend is going back to all the papers that have already been, in the public domain and have already been conducted, and look at them and try to practice these papers. You can try to practice these, and you can try to look at a pattern that they're trying to establish, and then you can start like properly looking at questions and interpreting these some questions more than the other. For example, like for instance, NLS doesn't really ask a lot of defense related current affairs, and I could reduce that by looking at what kind of current affairs it is that they're asking. So once you look through papers, it is only then that you understand the pattern of the paper. And obviously the pattern hasn't been static, but it does still help you to get a certain grip on what it is that you should be targeting and why you should look at some things more than the others. So personal strategy and making like a particular pattern in terms of how you're going to prep is something that you can look at. Second, attempt all questions and make eliminative guesses for those you don't know about. I think this is very important because a lot of people leave a lot of questions in this, but understand that they will anyway give you minus 0.25, or like they will deduct a quarter of a mark at a point in time where you don't answer or you give it incorrectly. So it is better to give out an answer than to not give out an answer, because you're anyway going to get the sum zero, even if it gets incorrect. But at times your guesses can also but also the guess game is also something that comes with time. And since you're reading so much and you're like consuming a lot of information, by the time that the exam comes closer, you can make some guesses that are more intelligent than the others. So whenever you look at an MCQ question, there are like 4 options that it has. One automatically gets completely eliminated because, let's say, for example, it isn't in that particular context, or you think you read something in the news and you think that, oh, this is. I remember there was a question which talked about who gave out this statement, and I didn't know the answer, but a few of my friends, what they did for it, like deducing that, was they looked at what is the nature of that statement. Is it something that, like, what kind of a political person would make that? Would somebody on the right or somebody on the left? Like, and then they try to deduce that with the names and correspond that information. So the thing with the paper is that you can make intelligent guesses. So out of 4 options, one goes out completely because it's not related. You can eliminate the second one by contextually putting it, and then the option is between the two. So it becomes a 50-50. And then if you try to come back to it, if you try to remember it over time, like you develop a practice where you can make more intelligent guesses than completely leaving out the question. So I would recommend like answer all questions and try to make and reduce your guesses as much as you can, so that you can go ahead and then make like that answer right. I think that happened for me in the paper also. I made a lot of like guesses, because you probably, even if you consume all the GK in the world, I don't think that there will be a point wherein you would get all of them correct. Like obviously that can be the case, but it's just very difficult to come by. So you can make intelligent guesses and you can eliminate choices accordingly in order to maximize your score in part A. Third is revise and practice every day with questions and mocking and sectional text. I think again, I think I've talked about this enough. What helped me was practicing for papers, because there will be a lot that you consume, but until and unless you put it into practice and look at what it is that you're missing, maybe, what I used to do is sit with my mocks and just look at what it is that I haven't gotten correctly. Is my question answering following a pattern? Because for some people, they always get a particular question wrong more than the others. So some people don't understand, let's say, what does the author mean by this particular thing, more than what necessarily needs to be true in order for this statement to exist. You will only get to know your patterns, you will only get to know your weaknesses when you practice. So I would say take up sectional tests, even if you cannot attempt a mock, that's okay. But like as soon as you think that you have gone through the papers, you've analyzed the papers well, and you know what this exam has for you, you should go ahead and then try to put the pen to the paper and just start like looking at part A, then part B, and practice the mock as a whole in order to get your like bearings in place. Um, use the GK section. Again, this GK section has does not have a static pattern, but there are certain topics that they haven't focused on at all. Like for example, I just talked about, but they focus more on some topics more than the others. For example, they will always probably ask questions about some indexes. They will talk about like they will always take up news that's more political in nature. And this is a pattern again that you can decode by attempting past year papers and mocks, because they are like structured that way. So you need not pay attention to all news, you should pay it more to some news than the others. So for example, if I knew that there's somebody who's done something for the first time, I just knew that has more of a chance for coming in than the others. If it's something that's related to like global policy or like government or some government action, I just knew that it has a chance of coming or appearing in the paper way more than some niche defense news, for instance. And these are patterns, obviously these are not unbreakable patterns, it's just something that I understood through constantly looking at the papers. So I think one good tip would be to focus on things and target your focus on a particular thing. um but also, again, time your mocks and take a test even if you think you don't know the GK section fully. A lot of people keep delaying taking, tests, and that is because they think that they don't know enough yet. Oh, I haven't completed the current affairs compendium for this month, so I can't attempt this mock. It's okay, because unless and until you understand that there are also other sections that you can improve on, you won't ever take that mock. A lot of people delay taking mocks because they feel like they're not ready yet. But I feel like you are never ready enough. You need to start, and you need to like start practicing, because the moment you start taking these mocks more regularly, it just becomes a pattern that you can navigate around. So try to take mocks even if you think you don't know the most GK, and that's okay. You can account for that, and maybe try to think about it this way, that hey, I didn't know GK, so it's fine. Give yourself that leverage, give yourself that, cut yourself some slack, and just take up that mock and try to practice as much as you can. Then again, I think keep up with resources till last week. This is something that everybody advised me also, because NLS does this thing where there's like they don't stop 1 month before, for example, or 2 months before, just like DU does. They do ask questions till like quite recent times, and I would recommend going through things probably till the last 2 or 3 days, because that's what I did. I kept going through the editorials, and there might be very less chance of that happening, but there have been times wherein questions have appeared from a week before the exam. So try to keep up with news, etc., till the time you know for sure ki, oh, this is done now. Like you can part with it, I think 2 or 3 days before, but try to keep up with the news till the last week at least. Make notes for the most important current affairs, and this helps even with like part B. There was also a question in terms of how to make notes for GK. I think everybody again has a very different strategy regarding making notes for GK, and I wouldn't go ahead and then just say that do something that might work for others but not for you. You would set your own template. But something that worked for me was going through editorials and looking at what has been repeatedly talked, like what is being repeatedly talked about, and like pick out a pattern and then write it on a Google Doc. I had a lengthy Google Doc, and I think I started from October tracking news on my own. And it was, I think, a 40-page doc. So anything that you feel is remotely, niche, something that is something very interesting, something that is not an everyday news, take that into account. Write as many details as you think that might be asked in, like, for example, like in the form of MCQ, etc. And try to make these notes as like, if there's a lot of detail, try to make them as detail oriented as possible, because most of the times editorials are again a source from wherein they design essay questions also for part B. I remember when I gave the paper in, I think, 23, for 20, the 2023 batch. I remember there was a question about AI, which was in the news quite a lot, and also about something related to Assam politics and something that was happening that time. So it was related to like child marriages that were happening there, and like people getting incarcerated. So this was something that I knew only from the newspaper. So if you make like thorough notes for things that you think are being talked about excessively, like there's a lot of debate that's going around, try to make those notes. That will help you in part A, but also in part B, because you can then write informative, substantive answers for your essay. Um, don't limit your GK resources to current, and you might want to visit GK resources, because 2020 static GK resources, because 2024 paper had some of it. So I remember that the 2024 paper asked a lot of like, hey, who's the minister of this particular thing and of this particular ministry, and who was the first person to do an XYZ thing. Now, these are not absolutely random questions. We had a passage about Israel being taken to the ICJ, and they just talked about, and they were just talking about that like entire narrative about South Africa, etc. And then they asked a particular question, which was, who's the current Indian person on the ICJ. Like, so I feel that is connected. They won't ask you random questions. I also remember they asked something about who was the first Indian person to win. I think Oscar from India, and that was the previous year. So these are usually connected questions, but also these are static questions, because you wouldn't really find these things in the newspaper. So if you're reading about like a debate that is happening currently, try to think of static questions that might come up, because they did ask those questions. So try to look at various sources of GK. Don't only restrict yourself to current. And yeah. Um, Again, I talked about this 11th point, but also 12th, other resources. Again, if you want to practice sectional, things, if you think you're good at English, but critical reasoning is where you have a problem with, you can look at free resources such as like past year question papers of CAT, GMAT. Obviously, these are not exactly what are required, which is why targeted mocks work obviously better. But if you want to go ahead and take it up to another level, try for GMAT sectional tests. I did that. They are not going to ask you this level, so only do that when you're done with the basics. Don't start with this, you're going to be overwhelmed. But try to go to this level and just practice it, just see it for yourself once. Don't There's no need, I don't recommend doing this, but if you want to go ahead and then polish your skills and check them, just like, if you're just worried, I get that, just do this. You can look for these sources. Now we come to part B, but before that, I'll just check for questions in the chat box. Yeah, I think I already talked about how much time you should give to party. Placement opportunity. I honestly have no idea. I have no stats on this. I'll get back to you the moment I know. Um, Okay, I think for static GK, there are a lot of materials. I did use Lucent. Lucent is a very famous book, but also there's this yearbook. There are a lot of yearbooks that come out. So if you want to refer to static GK, you can refer through yearbooks such as Manorama is very famous. Lucent is extremely famous. Arihant is very famous. I did use Arihant and Lucent. You can probably refer to that. Statistics, I think they are something that, like, I think NLTA GK compendiums also mentioned a lot of statistics. For example, if there's an index that's coming out, they will mention that. But otherwise, if you want to look, you can look at. I think this comes out in the year end. You can just type out important indexes that came out like for this particular year, and then you can refer to those. Any other questions regarding part A? Okay, I'll just move to part B, and then if you all want, I can take it up after I'm done with discussing part B. Okay, so the thing about part B is that it will always be like a lengthy question, and the crux of part B questions is going to revolve around it having a clash. It will be one interest pitted against the other, and you will either be like told to write for a particular interest, or they will just ask you what is the side that you're going to choose. There have been questions that have talked about environmental interests versus like private interests, and how do you have a balance between private property, public property, etc. But there was a question which talked about like a treaty that is signed between two countries. What is the scope of that treaty? What is the intention behind that? All of that, they do check your comprehension skills basically, and they check how well you've understood the problem, how well you can locate the clash that you're talking about, and how well can you accommodate for like an answer that is well reasoned while looking at the stakeholders, like interests, etc. With that, you need to not only know what side you are choosing, but you also need to answer why it is that you're reasoning, like giving out this reason, right? Why is it that you think that X person's interests are more important than Y, and how are you accommodating for their interests, and why is a particular accommodation important? So one of the problems that a lot of people face basically is that they make their answers assertive. Usually they don't really go ahead and then ground them well. And what do I mean by grounding? I mean, for example, if I'm saying that for example, a person A going ahead and digging, let's say, a well is against somebody else's right to private property. I need to tell, like for their like for public use, I need to tell why, this person A's right is more important on a public level, and equal access to water is more important than, let's say, honoring X's private right to property. You need to not only tell me why is it that it's important that everybody has access to it, but why is it important that everybody has access to it. It is important to like ground your answers not only in terms of like uh, asserting that, oh, this that you need to tell the person checking your sheet that, hey, this is why I think this is important, and this is why I think this should be given attention. You need to tell them why a certain thing is important instead of just thinking that they would know it. I know there's a paucity of time when you're writing part B answers, but the thing that makes your answer different from the other person's answer is your ability to ground answers well, your ability to reason these answers well, and their ability to just like with intuition pumps as examples, with equating this particular situation to another situation, understanding the intention behind what it is that this particular XYZ provision is trying to say, and why does this apply here, why is equality as a principle so important in this particular aspect, is what makes your answer different from an answer that is not well reasoned. um, Next, I think again, what a lot of people have issues with is that they can't think of a lot of arguments when it comes to let's say a question. They think that, oh, this is the one argument that I have, and I can't really possibly think, you know, because I don't follow a logical structure, for instance, right? But when you're starting with writing part B answers, for example, what you need to try to do is think about this problem, not something that is very intangible to you or something that is very superficially located, but try to think of it as a problem that you can probably like have as a daily affair, something that happened with you personally. And what would you do if uh, that happened with you personally? For example, there are a lot of problems that they mentioned, right? And you might think that this is so located, so like off, like this is located to you so far away, and you can't really put yourself in that particular position. But what personally helped me was that rather than thinking about this particular problem logically, or thinking about this in a synchronized patterned manner, what I did was I tried to place myself in the actor's shoes. So whoever the actor is, I will try to place myself in their position, and I'll think that, oh, if this happened with me, what would be my instantaneous or my commonsensical reaction? I used to write or like put those in my brain, and when I was practicing with mocks, I used to write that down, and I used to now look at these commonsensical reactions or like commonsensical arguments, and try to like mechanize those. And what do I mean by that? Again, by giving reason to why I feel that particular way, and why is that the right way to feel, and why is that the right way to say or push a particular argument, and like go ahead and then like write for it, right? For example, your reaction can be, oh, this is not right because it takes away access to like my X right. But why is that right so important to protect? For example, why is that more important than that X person's right? And why is it that I try to think and I try to say that? I used to take up examples, a lot of examples from different like situations, and try to put an equivalence. For example, this is what this situation is, and this is exactly similar to this situation, and this is why it makes sense. You can try to do that, and try to also like make sure that some, I mean, this will come with time. So I understand that if you cannot write an answer in 10 or 15 minutes, that's okay, but start writing, because it is only when you start writing that you can get better at it. Don't try to come up with the most perfect answer, because sometimes it will be the case that you can't come up with it, and some answers are going to be like like better than the other answers. But at a point in time when you don't start writing, you can't be like like helped in order to improve those answers, and you cannot find like problems or holes within those logical gaps. So try to write, and try to like, if even if you can't like write an answer, it's okay, take your time, but write a thoughtful, well reasoned answer, and then think about what you wrote, and then subsequently you can start practicing with different mocks, and then try to finish them in a time bound manner, and only then you can like speed up and like write according to what it is that the exam wants of you. I again go into not only the arguments, but why you're sitting a particular argument, and expand on ideas such as X being unfair, as to why it is unfair and what is the impact it causes, and don't leave it at assertion. So again, this is what in extension to just what I said. Try to build impact in your arguments. For example, try to tell what happens when this happens. So why should, like, give the person who's checking your sheet and a reason to care about what it is that your answer is trying to say, and make them believe it, and make them give them a reason to give you that particular, give them a reason to give you like 7 out of 10 instead of like a 4 out of 10. Tell them why is it that you think this should happen, why is it that you support this particular thing, and why does this have more value than the other thing. Another thing that you should try probably, and this is something that might come probably when you're preparing, like you're like in like last 2 months maybe, try to defeat the other person's argument, right? For example, if they've told, if they've asked you to decide between X and Y, and if you're siding with X, also try to mention why does a Y's position not like cater to all the things that X's position is catering to, and why would, even in Y's best case, would you defeat, like even in Y's best case, would your worst case stand, or why would your case stand. So try to build a comparative. This will come with time, and this is not something that if you start writing today, it won't probably come to you as naturally as it would when you try to practice it time and again. But do that, do try to engage with the other person's point of view, and still try to say that this, even if this is true, my case still is better than that side. Okay. Each side has enough points. I think a lot of, and you can write an answer from any side. And while reading, highlight what the facts are, what is particularly important to the side that you're leaning towards, and start writing. I think a lot of time is wasted with people trying to decide what side that they're going to take. What they do is they read the question once, they read the question, and then they think that, oh, I probably want to side with X instead of Y. But then they go back to the question again and then start reading for X, right? That actually takes away a lot of your time that you can spend writing instead of like looking for it. So when you're reading a question, for part B, try to read the question, and even when you're in the middle of it, sometimes you get an intuition that, hey, I support this thing more than this that thing. So try to underline important facts that are common. Like, just try to with a pencil, try to like give it like some highlighted mark, and circle important words that you can use for impacting. These are also things that you can use when they ask you questions. Like, there have been times with part B wherein they give you like a particular provision, or they give you a particular law, and then they ask you, why is it that this should be implemented or shouldn't be implemented. So when you're trying to do that, try to highlight important facts that are common to all, and then go ahead and then use that time. Like, just try to read the question once and then just start writing. You might think that the other side will always feel like they have more points, but once you start writing, you will realize that that is genuinely not the case, and you can accommodate for all the points from your side also. So don't waste time like rereading the questions. Try to read them at once, underline, give it a highlighted mark, circle it, whatever, and then go on and write the answer. Look at circled words only when you're writing the answer, because the reason why you circle them might be because they have an impact, or they can switch, or they give more weight to one side than the other. So try to do that, and when you do that, you will see that like this time utilization is better than going back to the question, reading it time and again, and gives you more clarity in your answer. Last, I think most times it's also the paper asking you what side you write for. So make sure you are in the habit of also writing for the more difficult side and get this evaluated. This again comes with time. You might not be able to take this up right now, but obviously there are some, when you're like writing a question, not all of them can obviously be balanced. Some side might have more points than the others. So in that, at that point, what you should do is, once you get the hang of, writing questions for one side, and you think that, oh, I'm able to write this better, once you get this evaluated, you're getting fair feedback or good feedback. Try to write for a side that is not as intuitive, right? Try when you try to write for a side that sometimes has everything against it, because sometimes in the paper they don't really ask you to, like, they don't really give you that agency or that option that, hey, write for any side that you want. Sometimes they tell you what side they want you to write for, and that side is usually something that doesn't come to you intuitively, and that is why they give that to you. So it's better to practice for that right now than in the paper. So try to accommodate and write for that particular side also, because that will help you to, think of it the other way, think of what the other side might think, and this is a good activity to do. Would recommend doing this with even editorials, because sometimes when you read editorials, instead of it being a factual piece, especially in Indian Express, most of them are opinionated pieces. They give you a strong opinion about a particular policy, for example, or a particular thing that happened recently, and they give you like a very descriptive, opinion about, hey, this is why I support this. This is why I think that this is a particular side to be taken on a particular position. And maybe when you're reading that, you feel like I am, very fixed, and now I'm very convinced of the fact that this is the right side to take. But the thing is that, at a point in time when you do that, you are not using like a lot of your critical thinking skills. So just to test yourself, just to get better at this activity, because after a certain point you will exhaust information consumption. Try to look at a particular editorial piece and try to think of what you would say if you were opposing that particular piece. This would help you as a critical engagement exercise for your part B, and help you think of not only counter arguments in part B questions, but also something that you might be able to think when you're writing essays, because even the essays that they usually ask you are either opinionated, they mostly are asking for an opinion, or it's like a policy, or it's something philosophical. So either way, you do need to side with something. And at that point, I think uh, engaging in this activity of like critically engaging and opposing something, like newspaper piece, for instance, helps you a lot. A lot of people, I think, did that last year also, and it worked out as a very good strategy. So try to do that. Try to engage with the more difficult side of a question, get those questions evaluated, write the like opposite of what you would have written, and give yourself the chance to explore what it is that you would come up with. So try to do that. Also, I think another complaint that a lot of people have is they don't have enough matter to write. First, because the paper, I think, asks you to write around 300 to 350 words, and I understand that's a very like that's a lot that they're asking. So what you should probably do is try to like, again, what this is what I've already said. When you're done with writing your answer, your substantive answer, or pushing up something that you want to say for your side, engage with the other side, because that's the only, like, that's one of the very good ways, if you don't have a lot of points that are substantive, to give them content as to why you should be getting, why is your side right. So try to engage with the other side, try to engage with the best case, try to engage with, even if I sided with X, I think this is what is bad about their case, and still this is something that I you know accommodate for as an interest in my side. So try to do that, and that will give you a fair bit of word count, and maybe this won't be possible for every question, but as long as it is possible, try to do that, and try to do that for at least mocking, so that by the time you write your paper, you're used to this pattern. Before I go to essay, I'll just check for questions. Where can we get the PYQs for Part B? So unfortunately, they don't release PYQ for like PYQs for Part B. They only have it for Part A. But I think mocks again could be a good way for practicing that. And again, I think one of few of the questions that I mentioned are the examples that they. I think the questions that they gave to us. So it's usually a clash between two interests and you favoring what it is that is more important to you. Yeah. What is a simple and effective format to structure answers for part B? Okay. Yes, we can get into this. So an effective way of something that worked for me was me first, first stating what it is that your side is. So don't make the examiner search for what it is that your side is. State it in the start. Tell them, hey, this is between this and this problem. The main issue revolves around this, and I am taking this X or Y person's side. This is a two-line thing. leave a line and then start. Why do you think that? There might be a lot of points that come in your head. For example, oh, this is better for the actor in this question. For example, this is an actor and this is a personal question. You can say this is a good thing for the actor because it accommodates all of their interests. But also you can look at it, hey, as like, hey, this also accommodates public interest, and this is good even on a larger scale because of X, Y, and Z. So maybe you can look at this and then try to like structure your points, and for structure you should have all your points by the time you're starting to write after these two lines. So some, if you have 4 points, these 4 points equal cannot be equal, right? Like, equally important, which is to say some point would have like more importance than the other. And for that you need to like think in your like my like head and be like, okay, maybe I should bring this point first and then this point second and this point third. So for out of all the points that you have, try to give them like, instead of like writing, just be like so first is for it is important to note that number one, for example, equality is important, and then explain how this is like more like equal, as an equal like opportunity for everybody. For example, access to a public well is highlighting the importance of equality, for instance. This is a very rudimentary example, but this is just something that I'm thinking of right now. The part B questions obviously are more intense than that, but try to focus on this and think about second, public access, but also third, this is good for the actor personally because of XYZ. So structure your points in terms of prioritization, give it a hierarchy, and then focus on writing that question. And then in the end, before you end with that, try to engage with the other side, like I already said. So be like, even if we accommodate Y as a case, which would probably talk about X, Y, and Z, I think that this doesn't make as much sense maybe, or this doesn't accommodate for X, Y, Z interests because of this, and this, and then conclude. Thus, in my opinion, X, Y, Z, and then restate. So tie back your conclusion to your introduction so that your answer as a body looks complete. That is the structure that I followed, and it like takes a lot of time to bring up that structure. It takes a lot of time to coherently put your points and like logically put your times in that particular time frame, especially when you're stressed. Because I remember, I think I had approximately 1 hour 20 to 15 or 20 minutes to do my part B. So I understand that if you might not be able to write the most perfect answers, which is why it's important for you to practice right now. And maybe right now also, it's important to take mocks that are timed. It's important to like devote only 10 minutes, even if you're not taking an entire mock. It's important to take a part B question maximum in 10 minutes, because or maybe 11 or 12 minutes, because you possibly cannot have more time than this in the real paper. So try to do that. Try to simulate this at home, or wherever it is that you're taking your mock, and then try to see how your structure comes along. Then get feedback on your structure. Give, even if like, even to like probably accept your trainers, you can show it to a friend also. Get feedback from them, because they can tell you as a layman, or a layperson, that hey, this is something that's missing in this, and maybe you can tie this better than this, or maybe you're not reasoning this well enough. Go through your own answers again, right? Go through your own papers again, go through your mock again, go through part B answers again, and see where it is that you're making the mistake. Because part of getting things right is not only to keep attempting number of papers, but also to see where it is that you're committing the mistakes in order for you to fix them. I hope that answers the question. We'll go to essay now. So for the essay, write a clear introduction, and in that mention what you're going to do throughout the essay, and state your opinion in the start, if it requires to give you an opinion. So again, most of the essays, like I already said, are going to be policy based. Either they're going to be based on something philosophical or current, or just revolve around similar patterns, and they will require you mostly to give out an opinion, even if they explicitly don't ask you ki, hey, reason out X, Y, and Z for us. They will in like you should, it's better for you to always give an opinion, or give like a side wherein you're slightly inclining, right? So that the examiner reading this again should not like should not have to search for what it is that you're trying to say. So for that, try to start with a clear body and a clear introduction. A clear introduction looks like this is like, probably try to highlight why is it that this particular topic is important. What is your opinion? What side you like? are more inclined towards, and how the structure of your essay is going to look like. So in the start, mention maybe give them a hint of what your arguments are going to say, right? Be like, I will talk about this is why this particular topic is important, and this is what the themes basically revolve around. I side with this particular X, Y, or Z side, and the arguments that are going to come up are A, B, and C, and this is how and then I will conclude the essay. Then you come to the body. You go ahead, and one thing that was working, I think, one thing that was working for me when I was writing my essays was, give it like a basic structure, right? Give a slight introduction to what it is that this particular topic revolves around. What are the main themes? What are the debates around it, right? Try to write 1, 2, 3 points, and for pros, give it one or two cons, that because like for example, critics have said X, Y, Z, and then when you're trying to conclude, come back to your site again. Be like, even if critics say this, my point stands because XYZ. So this is a structure that worked out for me. A clear introduction as to what it is that is coming forward, uh, what is the debate around, and maybe two good things or three good things. What are the critics, or what are the skeptics saying about this, and how do I tie it back with, hey, my argument still stands because it at least does X, Y, and Z. So do that. And obviously you can have a better body for this. I'm not saying that this is the rule for having a body for the essay. There are obviously more efficient ways or better ways to structure your essay, but this is something that personally worked for me. Obviously you can again devise a strategy that works for you personally. So again, you can try to write sample essays and see what works for you. So again, the body usually contains why this topic is currently relevant, what you think about it, why is it that you think about it, limitations and possible solutions to these limitations that you highlight. So again, this is what I just talked about. When you're trying to write what matters, also try to mention why is it that this matters, right? Again, we go back to what we did in part B. Try to mention why is that this is in current news, what is the relevance of this, and why is it that you are taking this particular side. Try to personalize it, try to give it an opinion, don't just leave it there as a factual piece. They don't want to essentially read facts, right? Give it your personal opinion, try to mention it when you're trying to give out arguments. Be like, this is what I think, or if you want, you can also mention that in conclusion, that uh, wrapping it up maybe, or like concluding with this, XYZ I feel, or I think, or I conclude with this as standing points, or as exclusive advantages that exist, right? So give that particular structure to it. Again, for the conclusion, try to synthesize the advantages and limitations to your opinion and wrap it up with an opinion that you mentioned, and try tie it back to the introduction. So introduction, again, like I said, you already were asked to like write your opinion in the introduction. So do that, write that down. But then when you've done with the points conclusion, when it's time for you to write the conclusion, write your opinion again so that you can tie it back to what you said in the introduction. So this will come with practice again. But when you're writing introduction, you will leave out, you will not give everything away. So when you're concluding, try to conclude with a definite point about what is it that you're trying to say, and tie it back to the introduction as to, this is why these arguments make sense, and this is what I'm wrapping up with. This gives a structure to the essay, but also apart from that, it gives a structure to, hey, what I said in the start also still stands when I'm ending the essay. Use your current affair notes in the essays that require you to state facts or revolve around a current issue. I think with the Assam example that I mentioned, there are a lot of, or maybe AI, a lot of debates will be picked up from editorial accounts, or maybe something that will be entirely random or philosophical, or something that's political again. But as many facts as you have, the more substantive or the more logical or the more in real life your essay can be. It can be grounded, right? You can ground them in fact. You don't need to then say, this might have happened here or there. Give them examples. So when you write or when you read newspaper, and when you come up with your notes, there will be things that can support your particular argument in a particular situation. Use those notes, make those notes in a way that is slightly descriptive, like I already said, and make sure that you can, they're designed this way that if there's something that might come in part B, you already have written basic arguments for that in your notes. Try to do that and use that information. Use even statistics if you remember any. Don't quote them out of nowhere. Don't write wrong things. But if you remember an example of, hey, this thing also happened, for example, in China, mention that. They will, I mean, I'm sure that that will be a better or a more appreciated essay than just writing about things randomly. Do that and ground your essay through current affairs or relevant topics. Again, try to practice an essay question also from both sides in order to get efficient practice. So again, this is something that I've already mentioned. What you need to try to do is not stay in your comfort zone all the time, right? It's important for you to practice things because it might be the case that something that you're prepared for is not something that they ask you of. So try to write questions from both sides, even if it's an essay, right? It's probably going to be maybe a neutral topic. If you feel like you know about a side more than the other side, right from the other point of view, right? Let's see, like just see what happens. Obviously it will challenge be a little bit challenging because you'll have to go against your intuition, but still do that. It's going to give you a newer perspective. It is going to give you newer arguments to defeat maybe when you're writing that essay, if that turns up at all. So do that. Engage with the other side. It's going to be a really good practice for thinking, reasoning, and laying or grounding your arguments. Yeah, with that, I'm mostly done with covering what it is that I had to say. I'll look at questions in the chat box. Right. Um, how long should we give for a question in part B? I think again, maybe 11 minutes. I think that's all, because if you even if you finish your part A in 65 minutes, that will leave you again with 1.5 hour to do your essay and your 6 questions. So I think all that you can manage is like 10 or 11 minutes. Try to write it under that. Sometimes some questions will have a lot of detail, they'll take up more time than the others. So accommodate for that. You need to know that sometimes one question will take 13 minutes for you to write, but some questions might take like 9 minutes. So make sure that it does balance out in the end. Should we go for or against or take a neutral stand if it's a debatable topic? Do when you're practicing, try to do if you know more about for, take against also, so that you are incentivized to read about it or incentivized to think about it in the other way. Because it might be the case that in the exam they don't give you that liberty or that agency. They might tell you what you have to do. So always be ready to take up the other side of it, but otherwise it should always ideally be more opinionated so that it differentiates your personal account from a factual account, and so that it can like tell what is it that you are thinking and why is it that you are thinking that. But also apart from that, make sure that you in the main exam attempt all, like don't be the devil's advocate. Do something that you have more information on and what you believe more. um okay, so I think, yeah, you mentioned we need to highlight the key issues in legal reasoning. What's the best way to figure that out from the question? Mostly it isn't explicitly mentioned. Again, right, that's true. The question really doesn't mention that. But when you think, when you like, sit down with a question, a part B question, it's going to be a long one. You're going to sit down and you're going to realize that the basic contention is maybe between this person wants this and this person wants that, right? So what is the common, what is something that they're fighting about? That is going to be one of your legal issues. What is it that they're clashing on? What is it that the dispute is about? That is going to be your main, like that will become one of your main things to talk about in part B. So take that up and make sure that your answer revolves around let's say for instance that particular clash. Take that clash, think about why is it that your actor is trying to do a better job at it than the next person, or the person who's opposite, and why is it that it serves more interests in your side or maybe on a public level than the other person's side would. So you would know that by again doing these questions, reading these questions, and coming to maybe two or three legal, not this is necessarily might not even be legal. So you'll come down to like two or three main issues. So center your answer on those two or three main clashes in terms of opinion. um should we mention laws and apply them for legal reasoning question, or is that not necessary? That's not necessary at all. See, the thing is that they don't really want to check your legal knowledge. It's just more about analysis. It's more genuinely a paper where you can where you can wherever is it that you can analyze better. They are likelier to give you like marks accordingly. So try to, there's no, if you know and if you think that one thing, in a particular context, if it's a particular law that has been passed, maybe you can mention that. I'm not saying that you should be aversive to that idea, but you can, there's no need for you to go ahead and then like think of laws or think of like legal jargon. They're not looking for that. Ideally, I think they prefer that you don't do that. So focus on analysis and grounding and reasoning more than that. Um, I just had a question and I hope you could answer that. What if it is the case that the question given to us in legal writing is as ambiguous as it can get, and one can make equally compelling case for both and against? What rubric does NLS use in such a scenario? I think mostly it can be. It's honestly usually if it's a question that's more balanced, it's always going to be the case that one side is going to be 49 and the other is going to be 51. It's not ever going to be the case that something is so tilted, because then that would make the obvious choice, right? It's always probably going to be the case wherein they have cases where it's balanced and you can write on equal fronts. For that, go with intuition. Again, go with something that you think you can do better. It's just that NLS, I think, would check the paper in that particular context, not according to what side had more points, but rather who made use of those points better. Who did a better job at analyzing, who did a better job at reasoning, who did a better job at like defining or grounding and telling us why, what side is better and why are they better. So that is then something that becomes the metric. So always keep that in mind. Even if like somebody has like 30 points and the other side is 70, but if the 30 points writer tells me that their case is more compelling, I am than somebody with 70 points, and they're just stating those points that hey, this is good because that and this and that, instead of telling me why that is good, I am likelier, or somebody whoever is checking is likelier to favor that person over this. So make sure that you ground your answers well and don't think about what side has better points or more points. Just focus on whatever number of points that you have, how you can ground them better. um any material to go through for critical reasoning. Again, I think passages, GMAT, past endless papers. If you GMAT, I mean, not a source I would personally recommend at the start. Maybe go through mocks. Go through. First thing that you need to do is go through past year papers. You'll get an idea. You'll get practice. So just uh, go ahead and then uh, try to look at that. Uh, if you want to practice at an advanced level, again, GMAT and all of these resources, CAT papers are a good way to practice it. But otherwise, critical reasoning can be practiced well enough through mocks. When did you started giving mock? What was your range of scores and how did it progress? Honestly, it was different for every mock because not every mock had passages that I was very used to. Some mocks had more of science than I would like it to have. For example, some of them would have more gender, so I would score better in things that I have more familiarity to, which is why reading editorials worked better for me. I remember that when I think one thing about mocks is you will not score, you might not score as much as you score in marks in like mocks, because it can be -5 or +5, depends on how well you understand the paper. So the reason why I suggested like doing newspapers is that so you can familiarize yourself with like different topics, and so that your readability in the real exam is maintained and you can easily like comprehensively do reading of those in a quick and a time bound manner. So I think I remember giving starting on mocks, and my mocks I think I got part A, and this is not a comparative. I think I did get somewhere around like 53, 54 when I was starting in part A, which is not to say that somebody who's not getting the score cannot do it, because I've seen a lot of people getting like even 30s, 20s, shooting up to like late 50s. So it's just a game of skill, honestly. The more you practice, because by the end of it I was scoring like 62, 63, or 64 also on part A. So and this is not to say that I got those marks in real life, but I feel like with time and with practicing and progress, like natural progression, you are likelier to get better marks. So focus on that. You can take that up as like a challenge and then be like, hey, I'll try to score more than I did last time. So don't worry about it that much. It's not an indication of how well you're going to do on your real exam. uh, any right Could you please suggest a strategy for the coming months as to how many passages a day, practicing essays, and frequency of mocks? What should a day encompass? Right, I think again this works according to what it is that your schedule is structured around, because a lot of people, most of them give, like a lot of people give this exam when they're working, a lot of them are giving this full time. I would say that whatever is it, whatever it is that works for you, try to touch some part of your exam every day. If you are not in the mood to do GK, or if you're not in the mood to like consume a lot of knowledge today, that's okay, that's fine. Maybe take up critical reasoning, maybe read the passages, maybe do more English, do something every day is what my idea is going to be. But as per mocks, I think the nearer you get to exam, it's the better it is to practice. I used to try and take one mock every 2 or 3 days when I was nearing the exam, like around 1.5-ish month ago. But that's not something that you need to do right now. Right now, focus on like consumption of like as much information as you can for GK, for adopting, skills for critical writing, critical thinking, English, all of that. Do that. But try to do something for it every day. Make a schedule according to your availability. If you're in the last year of your college, you might have more college related stuff also. So try to accommodate for this every day and try to make sure that you are doing something related to the exam every day, even if it's just reading the newspaper today. That's okay, but just do something. Do sectional mocks if you're not in a mood to do full-fledged mock. Write a part B answer from the mock. That's okay, but just do something every day.
Hi,
Um,
Sanya. Sorry to interrupt you.
yes,
I think we'll just quickly wrap up the session. I also need to be somewhere.
I understand.
So
I'll
just
just
quickly wrap up in
Yeah,
like
yeah,
another two, three
yeah.
minutes.
I don't know. Suddenly there are like 20 questions in here. I wasn't really expecting that. I'll just wrap those up. Again, what should be an ideal 4 to 6 month? I think I've addressed this one. Can you share this PDF in the group? I already sent it to Anisha. I think Anisha, if you could share that.
Yeah,
Would
yeah, I'll
you
do it.
have a session on essay? I'm not really sure. I did both Hindu and Indian Express. So I would recommend if you want to start, you can start with either of these instead of like doing both if you don't want to do that. Um, how to tackle literature passages, heavy vocabularies, I'm not familiar with that. That's okay because sometimes it's going to be the case that some things are more difficult for you to read than others. So try to, again, just get in the practice of that. If you read newspaper every day, you are going to get familiar with these passages every day. So try to do that. And if you don't know something, try to write that word down. Try to, if you revisit, so that when you revisit that, you are not in such a fix. So do that so that it gets better for you over time. What's a good source to find questions from Part B legal writing? I think I used mocks because I don't think there are exact simulations of free resources on the internet for Part B questions. Decent scores for Part A and B. Again, this depends on how far you are from the exam. A decent score right now can also be like a 30 because you're very like you're just starting off right now. That's okay. That's different for every person. So what you need to do is you need to just figure out if you're doing better than the last time. If you're doing better, that's good enough progress. And by the time you come to it, if you're like 10-15 days away and if you're scoring like like in 50s, mid 50s, that's good enough for part A and then subsequently part B. Yeah. I think those are all the questions. So thank you so much. Oh wait, there's another one. Thank you so much, guys, for the session. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate coming here. And I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much, Anish, for having me here.
Right. Thank you so much, Sanya, for joining in. I think students learned a lot from you, and we'll have a lot more sessions being taken by you in the future. So thank you, everyone, for joining in on a Sunday evening. I am assuming you had another plan, but you stayed back for the session. So thank you so much, everyone. In case you are interested to join NLTI for our mentorship or our mocks, you can visit our website. And the link to our Telegram channel is there in the description of the YouTube video. So feel free to reach out to us in case you are interested in joining our program. Thank you everyone for joining in again. We hope to see you next time as well. Thank you.
Thank you.